This is Jaden, and today we're going to talk about chapters 7 through 16 in Freak the Mighty by Rodman Philbrick, one of my all-time favorite books. This has won many awards, and it's just really famous, an amazing children's book. And so I could keep on praising this book. You know, it's just so amazing. And anyway, we are now going to start chapter 7, okay? Walking high above the world, okay? And since this is an amazing book, okay? Hope that you really enjoy that time with me, okay? Chapter 7 is called Walking High Above the World. So I wanted to ask, you know, when Freak said, I'm gonna read the book. When Freak says, "The Blade and his gang, they've locked onto us. Their trajectory is converging. Go to the left. Make it quick if you want to live." If you had been Max, okay, and you heard this, and we know the Blade is a very, very scary guy, right? Then how would you have felt? How would you react? And I know that people will be like, run. And since Freak does that, I wanted to, not Freak, Max, both work. But anyway, not Freak. Sorry, Freak. I don't know why. Just getting mixed up. Freak is Kevin, right? Max is, I guess, maybe Mighty. But anyway, what I wanted to say was, if you were Max, then how would you react? That would be an easy one, right? So so to make it more challenging, I wanted to ask you, what if you had been, what do you do if people begin to bully you? I know that Blade with a knife. Now that means that I need to probably fight or run away as fast as I can. But since Blade is really dangerous, I just wanted to ask you a normal bully who does not bring a knife and isn't that scared as Blade, okay? Just a regular school bully that you find, okay? And yeah, how would you react? And what would you do? Okay, now I also wanted to ask you, when you know that, do you think that I wanted to ask you, you know, when they were going into the water, right? What's one thing that fear does to you, and why? And why do you think that this thing made it so that Max ran into the water? Maybe fear is that you can do anything for fear, because like he even goes into the water, right? And when they were like going into the water, what did you feel? I mean, what did you feel inside? Like, did you feel horror, panic, or excitement? And I wanted to ask, you know how like when Tony D also went in there, right? And he was like, help, and he was blubbering. And when you read that, how did your perspective of Tony D change? I thought that it was more funny now, you know, and that Tony D wasn't as tough as you pretended to be, right? And then I wanted to ask you about this. So, you know how they are now, there are these, you know how the policeman came, right? And when you begin to read, about this and how they survived and the policemen were all there, right? I wanted to ask you, how do you think that was really a big turning point in the book, really? And sort of turning point, like how the point. So I think that maybe it was that Freak and Max have been good friends, right? But I think that this really sealed their bond, right? Because now Max helped Freak survive. So I think this is really how it sealed the bond. Okay. Now chapter 8, which is called Dinosaur Brain. And I wanted to ask you, Grim, right? Do you think that if Grim is on your good side, then Grim is not necessarily a bad dude? Or do you think that Grim is just a grim old person who is always grim and you wouldn't want him on any side, and probably you would just not want to know him at all? Okay. And now I wanted to ask you about, I wanted to also ask you about, Freak, right? And he's like, wonka, 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 wonka. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that this is a polite way to awaken somebody or not? And then I wanted to ask you, when Freak begins to talk about quests, were you excited because did you think that they were actually going to fight? Or did you know that there wasn't really going to be any fight at all? And now, you know how Freak, I wanted to ask you another question, and it is, the dictionary, right? I wanted to ask you about the dictionary. Do you think that words and stuff like that, like words, searching up words, hard words, knowledge, really, well, just words, I guess. Do you think that they're interesting, or do you think that they're pretty boring? I'm a writer, really, so I really am interested in writing. So same with words. And then now we're going to go to chapter 9, which is called Life is Dangerous. When you read Life is Dangerous, what did you think? Did you think that some other bad, mean, horrible thing is going to happen in this chapter or not? Or do you think it was just, saying in the chapter? Okay, now I wanted to ask you about imagination. Do you think that imagination, do you think that this imagination really is a good thing, or do you think it'll just carry you into another world and it will be bad for you because that might mean that you might daydream a lot, and in some people's opinion, daydreaming is bad. Now I wanted to ask you, do you think that daydreaming is bad or not? It's not necessarily, it's not like really bad. I daydream sometimes, and yeah, I daydream a lot. And do you like how Freak is making everything, even the sidewalk, like a bridge, and like you're even afraid to look down? Do you think that this is actually possible, or do you think this is just a fiction book and that's not the only reason why this is happening? And do you think that it would be cool to hang out with Freak because, maybe you could also walk on some bridges? I think that'll be cool. Okay, now I wanted to ask you about medical research, right? And I wanted to ask you, do you think that saliva counts as blood or not? But now, Freak is talking about, a new body, and that he's gonna go into this new body. Well, this book, it was copyrighted 1993, okay? And this is right now the 21st century. Maybe it's the 22nd century. Because, YouTube, my videos are on right now, YouTube, maybe since I've recorded it, time has gone by, tick, 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 and now maybe it is the 22nd century. But I'm 99% sure it's right. It's still the 21st century right now for you. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, do you think that this, how like you go into another body, do you think that this is even possible or not? And really, do you think that this going into a new body, do you think it's worth the pain? Or do you think that you would just be your old self and just have no pain. And sometimes that sometimes you have to sacrifice for the greater good. When I always talk about sacrifice, I always think about those people who sacrificed other people for the greater good. I'm not talking about that, I'm just talking little things to sacrifice. Like maybe you can sacrifice your ice cream so that you can become a better person at math. Okay, I personally would not sacrifice my ice cream, but for people who like math, then okay. Yeah, that was a bad example. I'm pretty sure most kids my age do not won't sacrifice an ice cream, but you got my point, right? Anyway, I also wanted to ask you, do you think that Freak, deep down, do you think that Freak hates himself? Well, not hates himself, but maybe his body, because, and do you think, and now I wanted to also talk about something else, and it's self-compassion, And I really thought about this because of, Max, but it also sort of works for Freak. Max, do you think that Max has a lot of self-compassion? And self-compassion, well, self is yourself, right? And compassion is something that you're compassionate about or something that you care about. So it's basically caring about yourself. And do you think that Max really has a lot of well, of course he cares for himself, but really, do you think that he's proud that he is himself or not? Because he's sort of I didn't even have a brain, and that he was dumb, right? And And Max is not dumb. So now I wanted to ask you, do you think that self-compassion is important? And do you think, and if you had to choose one character that you wanted more self-compassion for, who would it be in this book? And do you think that you have a lot of self-compassion? Please be honest, and really, because if you don't have a lot of self-compassion, then you can work on it, and soon enough, you'll have self-compassion. Self-compassion is very important. Okay, chapter 10 is called Rats or Worse. Okay, I also wanted to ask you, Grim has a smug look because he thinks that maybe, when Max says that Freak's memorized almost a whole dictionary and he knows everything, and Grim smirks because he thinks that, that maybe Kevin or Freak just tricked Max into thinking that, because sometimes even Grim thinks that maybe Max is a little dumb, which I definitely know is not. Do you think that, do you like people who thinks they know everything in the world? Ugh, I hate those guys. Yeah, I just really do hate them. And then I also wanted to ask you, do you think, this treasure hunt in a storm drain, right? Do you think that this is going to be anything interesting, or do you think it's one of those imagination games that, Freak is talking about? And I'm not saying that imagination is bad. I love imagination. One way I play the imagination is, I pretend that I really like Star Wars, so I pretend I'm a Jedi Knight, and I don't really have any stick, so I mostly use I had a drum set long ago, or maybe some point. I don't know. What should I do? I play the violin, and you know how there's a bow that comes along with the violin. Well, I sort of pretend that's my lightsaber, and I pretend there's a battle droids everywhere, and so I battle them fiercely, and there's gonna be a treasure at not a treasure, but if I kill all of them, well, not kill because battle droids are droids, but anyway, it would take too long to describe the game, but that's sort of what I do when I'm bored. Okay, excuse me. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that, this whole plan, do you think that this is a good plan or a bad plan? And now I wanted to ask you about, the purse, right? Do you think that this was a very good treasure or not? And I also wanted to ask you, so there's this, belonging to Loretta Lee. And so Freak says she must be a damsel in distress. But then the last paragraph is this, which, as it turns out, is almost true. The real deal is that she's a damsel who causes distress, which we will find out the very next day. That's a pretty epic ending. I really like Rodman Philbrick's endings, and I was thinking about Rodman Philbrick, and he actually has made some other books. He has made The Mostly True Adventures of Homer P. Figg, or something like that. An amazing book. I love that one. One of my all-time favorite books. And anyway, we're going to go to chapter 11, The Damsel of Distress, right? Not the damsel in distress, but the damsel of distress. Okay, now I wanted to ask you, do you think that if you live in the Testaments, that makes you automatically poor, first of all? And another thing is, even if you live in the Testaments, what are 10 ways, okay, wait, one hand was holding the book, so 10 ways that you could do to make it better and to look like it did not maybe was the Testaments. Okay, I think that number 1, putting flowers around the house always cheers me up about that, okay? Number 2, what's another way? Maybe painting in a new color. And number 3, if anything's broken, fixing it up, that's always good. Number 4, put some decoration around, not really a big thing because you might not afford it, but just a little, something like this, lights. They don't cost that much, I bought them at Target or Amazon, I'm not very sure. And number 5, books. Books always make a better life. Maybe an instrument, that's number 6. Number 7 is a garden, a beautiful garden. Number 8, I'm running out of ideas, let's see, maybe decorating a car. Okay, that's getting a little too far. Number 9, making the house very neat, because I know that doesn't really make it, that doesn't, but the thing is it helps because remember, we're gonna learn later that Iggy's and Loretta Lee's house, it sort of looks like a trash can, right? And the thing is, it looks like a trash can, and that sort of makes it look a little poorer, right? So I think that, making it a little neater. And 10 is just spending time with your family, and just having not that, maybe another thing is, okay, number 10, okay, sorry, I'm probably taking away all your ideas, okay, so I'm gonna stop for number 10, so, and once you're done, I'm gonna give you 5 seconds, well, of course you can just pause the video, but I'm gonna anyway give you 5 seconds just for fun. And then after your 5 seconds, or if you pause the video, maybe a minute, then then we can talk about more. So I'm gonna give you 5 seconds. Okay, so we're done with the 5 seconds. And so now there's this Iggy, right? And what do you think about Iggy? How would you describe Iggy? And how would you describe Loretta Lee? And do you think that do you think that Iggy is treating Mrs. Lee? Let's call her Mrs. No, not Mrs. Lee, but Loretta Lee. That's a long name to say, so I'll just call her Miss L. Okay, Miss L. Or that's Loretta. And so I wanted to also ask you, do you think that, I also wanted to ask you, do you think that Iggy is the kind of guy you want to mess with or not? And also I wanted to ask you about the treatment towards Loretta. I wanted to ask you about, the treatment to Loretta. Did I say that? Oh man, sorry. I wanted to ask you about the treatment to Freak, and I said right. Yeah. How do you think that Freak is treated well in here? And I also wanted to ask you, how where was it? Oh yeah, okay. Now also Kenny, there's like Killer Kane, right? Do you think that Killer Kane was a friend of Iggy's, or do you think that Iggy was sort of like a follower to Kenny Kane, or maybe I don't know what do you think it is? And also, now it says this. So I wanted to read this. Sentence is this, which is the first time I noticed all the other crushed cans. They're everywhere. The whole place is like a trash can or a big ashtray or something. It says trash can, right? And this sort of makes it look more poorer, which I wanted to really talk about. And what's another thing that the trash can? Do people really care for a trash can? No, excuse me. And this house doesn't look like it's very well cared for, right? I just wanted to, really talk about that. And I wanted to ask you about how Iggy and Loretta leave, right? Do you think that when Iggy shoves them out the door, right? Of course, we know that that's rude, but to Freak and Maxwell, how do you think that felt? And what do you think they did? I'm pretty sure I would be like, whew, I survived. Oh yeah, and talking about I Survived, there's actually a really good series called I Survived by Lauren Tarshish. I loved it. I read almost every book of the series, and I read new books every day. So please check that out. Yeah, just really thought about I Survived, and Okay, now chapter 12 is called Killer Kane. Killer Kane had a kid who got no brain, and so I wanted to ask you. We learned that when Freak's dad heard that Freak had a birth defect, he was just like, he disappeared. Do you think that this was a very good dad? Do you think that this was going to be a very good person? And now I wanted to also ask you about how do you like school? Today I went to school. It was 1 to 10, I would say. 9. Okay, I would say a 9. Okay, maybe an 8 or a 9. Let's see. Well, today we didn't do a lot, so maybe that was why. But mostly it's like a 9 or 10. But today I guess it was an 8, maybe a 9, barely a 9. But what I wanted to really talk about was, to Maxwell, school was negative billion, negative infinity, right? He hated it because he was like called dumb and everything. And do you think that the school should do a better job of teaching him, or do you think that Maxwell should do a better job of keeping up with his homework and actually trying? Or do you think that the school and Max should be trying? Okay, and I also wanted to ask you about this girl, right? This girl, if you had been Max, how would you have reacted to this girl? Would you have punched her, or would you have just be quiet? Because I wanted to say, if he punched her, that would just make his reputation even better, which would be very bad when the school year just started, right? And now I also wanted to ask you, do you know how they began to, you know how we began to, like there was this Freak the Mighty, Freak the Mighty, Freak the Mighty. There was like this chant, and they were just, going around. And really, I wanted to ask you, Freak has this way of making people like him a little, you know? Even if he's crippled. And, well, I guess not crippled, isn't it? I guess a little crippled. But that doesn't mean, because when most people are not crippled, compared to Freak, their knowledge is pretty crippled. But Freak's knowledge is not crippled, but his physical body is crippled. And for people who think that maybe they're dumb, no, I just mean, you're also smart. I'm not as smart as Freak. Nobody is smart or dumb. Everybody, right? People are people. It isn't like smart people are all up there and dumb people. There's no dumb people, no smart people. Because if you try, then you can become dumb. You can just not do anything and you become dumb. But if you're dumb and you try really hard, that you can skyrocket. You can be smart. So really, not smart. Smart is a very good way to really, talk to somebody, right? Because smart, not talk, but really describe somebody, because you can be as smart as them. But anyway, let's go back here, and I wanted to ask you, do you think that this riot, not a riot, but sort of like a riot, right? Do you think that this was a very good riot to start school? This chant, or do you think this was a bad chant? I have to say it was a good chant. I think it sort of boosted Max's self-esteem, right? Okay, chapter 13 is called American Chop Suey. And I wanted to ask you, how Freak was kept on eating American Chop Suey, and suddenly he was, and suddenly he was swelling up, and he had to go to the ambulance, right? Why do you think that Freak was like this? And also now he has to go, to the principal's office alone. When you read this, how did you feel? And what did you expect was going to come up next? And another thing I really wanted to ask you was, do you think that, how his dad wants to know if something, right? And now Max is like this. He's like, I don't want to hear it, right? And if you had been Max, would you have done the same thing? I would have. And also, I wanted to ask you, how he suddenly blanked out, right? And when he came back, the nurse was crying, right? And then Max guessed that maybe he had hurt somebody, right? And it's just that it's really scary because he might do something and then not remember it, right? And do you think that this is what happened to Killer K? Maybe he just blanked out and then killed, and then his, well, not killed, but you'll find out more later. Not killed, but done something really bad, right? I just began to think of killed because, that just seemed very likely if Killer Kane was in for a really long sentence, right? It's even longer than Maxwell's whole life. So I thought that maybe killing, maybe murder, I don't know. But also, I wanted to talk about, do you think that Maxwell actually did hurt the nurse or not? Or do you think that the nurse was just very emotional? Okay, chapter 14 is called Cross My Heart and Hope to Die. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, how Graham and Grim were shouting, and they were and Grim wanted to use a gun just in case Maxwell's dad came. If you had been Maxwell and you heard this, how would you feel? Metaphor and simile. And do you think that normally, if somebody said that he would need a gun to keep away your father, how would you feel? but this is not normal circumstances. If you had been Maxwell, it would have been different, right? And I wanted to ask you, do you think that's a good idea that Grim should use a gun, or do you agree with Graham? And now we're going to go to chapter 15. It is called What Came Down the Chimney. Now it's Christmas Eve and I'm right now going to die. Wait, well, not die, that's a little too dramatic, but I think I'm going to not really die, but be very sad. Because I'm well, not sad, but jealous, because it's right now December for me. I'm pretty sure to you guys, it is right now not December, but to me it is December. By the time it's posted though, I'll probably be, I don't know, January, because I make a lot of videos. But anyway, you know, like how Christmas Eve, right? How would you describe Christmas Eve? And I wanted to use metaphor, simile. And I also wanted to ask you, you know, about, do you think that what Grimm's saying, how do you think that Grimm, you know, what Grimm's stories, what do you think that they're doing to the, you know, their group, Graham, Grimm, Freak, the Fair Gwen, and then there's Max. And then I wanted to also ask you about the opening presents. What do you think was the most epic present ever? It was, of course, Freaks. I was so surprised. I almost fainted. It was amazing. I could never have done that. I could have made something cool, but definitely no way. I couldn't have made that. Freak is just amazing, you know? And I also wanted to ask you about do you think, you know, when Max was sleeping, right? Well, not really sleeping, and then suddenly his father came, right? And he says this, "I came back like I promised." Epic. Whoo, that's an epic one. So, who did you guess this guy was before you knew that it was Max's father? And do you think that is a very, and all in all, just from that, how would you guess how, how did, in your mind, what kind of image did Max's father really put into your head? And do you think that Max's father is the person you want to be best buddies with? I wouldn't want to be, but then again, it might be very smart to be, because if I'm not, and I'm his enemy, then he could, you know, kill me. So, I would like to stay on his good side, but I don't want to be his friend. Excuse me. I wanted to also ask you about, I wanted to ask you about his father. Did you think that his father was as bad as you thought or not? As you pictured? And also, I wanted to ask you about, how, you know how they were all going along to Iggy, right? And Iggy and Loretta, you know? And I wanted to ask you, you know, Iggy, he sort of acts as very, very, very nervous, right? And it's like, and do you think that that Maxwell's father was like the tough guy everywhere in motorcycle gangs and all that? And also, now, I also wanted to ask you, do you think that you would want to be the chip of the old block of your father? And do you think that Maxwell someday will also do something that will make him go to jail? Or do you think that's not possible? Because, oh my, excuse me? Because that's not possible, because Maxwell's an amazing dude. Well, okay. excuse me again. And anyway, we finished Freak the Mighty for today. And I wanted to really, I'm really thankful. So I'm gonna ask you a few last questions. What was your favorite character in these chapters, and then the whole book so far? Okay, because your favorite character always changes, and of course we got this new. Wait, did I ask you what was your favorite character in these chapters and in the whole book? No, I just meant who was your least favorite character and who was your favorite character, and also, because of course they always change the characters, right? And we also met a lot of new characters this time, right? Also, in these chapters, what was your favorite part in these chapters so far, and then the whole book so far, because they might have always changed? And what do you predict is going to happen next to Max? And how do you think that Grim and Graham and Kevin or Freak, either one, and the Fair Gwen, how do you think they would feel? And do you think that what do you think will happen to Max's dad? Do you think that he'll be free, or do you think that he'll be arrested again? And how do you like the book so far? Always fun to monitor that. I loved it. And now, guys, we're sadly done. But hopefully you'll see all my other videos and keep reading, okay? My motto, keep reading. Reading is amazing, okay? So just have a great rest of your just have a great day, okay? Rest of your day. If it's nighttime for you and you're just about to go to sleep, or if it's just nighttime and you're not going to go to sleep in a few hours, still have a great night or have a great day for everybody everywhere, okay? Bye, guys.